Empaths, welcome back to my safe space and back to Journey Through the Tarot. We're going to be talking about our week and some change with the Temperance card. And then introducing the Devil. So we'll have a week with the Devil. This experience is inspired by Dirty and Divine by Alice B. Grist. She did a transformative journey through the tarot. She spent a day with each card. We're doing a week, and we're getting a lot of information from Robert M. Place, one of my tarot teachers. His book, The Tarot: History, Symbolism, and Divination. And we're using the Waite-Smith Symbolism from the Rider Tarot deck. If you need to pick up any of those things, they're in my Amazon store, which is in the description of this video. So let's get into it. A week with the Temperance card. And remember, Temperance represents the zodiac sign of Sagittarius. So it was my week in part. I felt like a lot happened. I'm getting over the flu, so I've just been able to start talking the past couple of days. I still have kind of a ringing in my ears, and it started with a stomach flu when I was visiting Orlando, and that was during the death card week, and then it turned into the stomach flu, or it was the stomach flu, and then it turned into a head cold. It was probably the worst I've ever experienced in my life. And if you remember from learning about the Temperance card, as the angel here is blending and mixing the liquids, it can be about balancing bodily fluids or the vital liquids, which are blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile in the body. So it's interesting that a head cold would come up in that time. And I had it the entire duration of the Temperance week. It was crazy. So that was one thing that showed up. And I also had a visitation dream with someone that I feel a soul connection to. There's soul recognition there. It's a fellow Sagittarius. He's sort of famous, and we follow each other on Instagram. So we don't really know each other. We ran in the same circles in New York City. We don't really know each other though. Personally, we've never had one, in-person contact. And he got through an extremely difficult time in his life with meditation and attained a level of self-mastery through alchemy work, inner alchemy work. And it was a couple of decades, I guess. He had a really troublesome childhood. It wasn't easy. And he had to go through a trial learning patience, tolerance, and faith. He was imprisoned. He was wrongfully accused and imprisoned for almost 2 decades. So, and now teaches about spiritual practice. So he used that time to forge this inner resilience and inner strength. And I've always found that very inspiring. I actually had a visitation dream about him, and I only had one once before, when sort of like an astral plane meeting, when we first started following each other and supporting each other on Instagram. So that was interesting. Again, he's a Sagittarius, and Temperance is affiliated with associated with the Sagittarius card. My best friend, who's also doing this journey actively, has a new mantra for manifestation. When we ask God or the universe or the angels, whoever you talk to, when we ask that source, there are a few ways that can be answered, right? And it's yes, not yet, or something better, right? So And this has shifted his experience greatly instead of feeling like he's denied or rejected, right? And so I found that very inspiring too. And I thought that's such a temperance thing, right? That mindset, that outlook. We also went through the Leo full moon. And for me, that brought a lot of anxiety, a lot of confusion, some scattered energy, may have been a psychic attack. I don't know. And I had to do some unblending with some of my firefighter parts, right? And if you remember, blending came up when we were talking about the description of the Temperance card. And I made the association of my internal family systems training where we talked about unblending with parts, right? Your true self is not one of these parts that's meant to protect you, right? Or an exile that we can't accept. Our true self is the patient part, right? Is the temperate, tolerant, expanded, playful part of us. So that's your true self. And when we have a part come up, parts can carry the pain. Parts can carry sensations, beliefs, ideas, thoughts, trauma, and they all serve a purpose. So when we look at them, one thing we want to do is not get rid of them because they serve a purpose, show them respect for the role they're playing, and attempt to unblend, right? Bring in more self-presence, more self-energy, right? Self with a capital S, that higher self. So talking about temperance, this may be my card in the future for unblending with a part, right? Or going through an illness possibly, right? That's one reason why this experience can help us become a more proficient reader. Because if you ever watched a reading and someone will say, oh, this is my divorce card, right? Or, oh, this is my card for internet spying or whatever it is, right? We have these associations, and that's what's being created here, right? As we experience a week with each card, it will strengthen us as readers as well. But even that came up in question this week. I had to do some unblending with firefighter parts, right? Those are the reactive parts, the parts that want to soothe the pain, that want to protect us from feeling the pain. And I did unblend. I do feel unblended. I do feel like some self energy came in, some self presence was able to hold that part. And I was able to unblend from it and observe. And so things took a slower pace to life, working more intentionally, feeling more in control and less reactive, because those firefighter parts are the reactive parts in IFS. So that felt empowering. My best friend made peace with his temper and realized that it may be based on an irrational belief that he should be mad or put up a fight or protest or resist reality, whatever the underlying belief is around that. He didn't feel like he was actually an angry person. It's just something he felt he should do. So he also kind of unblended, right? Because he stopped identifying with the anger. And then his true self is, quote unquote, pretty happy-go-lucky. So he also unblended from this angry part of himself and was able to observe it. And that self with a higher S, or with a capital S, the higher self, the true self, who we really are, knows how to heal, knows what we need to soothe, to heal. This is the medicine, right? This is the healing work. So he was able to blend and see that and bring in some self-energy, some self-presence. And then our mutual friend sent him a meme that we were having this conversation. He's like, oh my gosh, you'll never guess what this person just sent me. He's also he's a fellow fire sign. He's a Leo. And the meme read, there are no happier people on this planet than those who decide that they want something, define what they want, get hold of the feeling of it even before its manifestation, and then joyously watch the unfolding as piece by piece by piece it begins to unfold. That's the feeling of your hands in the clay. And that's an Abraham Hicks quote regarding manifestation. And I thought that's definitely apropos to temperance. As we allow for the unfolding, we practice patience, tolerance. So I found that very interesting. And effortlessness as a theme in my work kept coming up this week. Like, maybe I'm working too hard for what I'm doing. What's the most effortless thing? I actually and how it was coming in for me, the imagery that was coming in is I was recalling my time in musical theater conservatory, and I trained in acting, and that's where my best friend and I met. And I recalled scene work and acting exercises I did with him in school, or even just reading plays and creating just for fun. And we never had to work or think very hard. We both would just be inspired by the synergy in our collaborations and follow the energy curiously, discovering what wanted to be created through us. I'm always sparked with inspiration and ignited creatively when I'm with him. And that, it always feels very effortless to me. I think it's the synergy we create together. I think we have relationships like that, where we can both hold each other up and things like to flow between us, and we can read it. We can read each other while also holding and accessing the creative flow. I think that that's the most effortless work you can do. And that made me think maybe I'm trying a little too hard in other ways, and other like, how can I make this work, this process, be more effortless? That came up a lot. It made me question what I was doing, what I was putting out there, my process. I'm always tweaking the process. So I had a healing session with my mentor, Shelley Poovey, yesterday morning. And it was a lot of healing self-image, changing my inner narrative. There was ancestral healing, alchemy items, which are action steps for manifestation of my target, right, of your target. Releasing susceptibility to psychic attack from my energy field with, there was a transformation of a symbol that was contained in my energy field it was sort of like a broken symbol of a cross, and it was attracting, I guess, psychic attack, dejection, sabotage of my efforts, things like that. And we worked on transforming that to a 6-pointed star, instead of the kind of rejection, and transforming it into more, and transmuting it to a more empowered place of Christ consciousness, of overcoming the trials and sort of ascending that experience. And also, we worked on making my business vortex my collaborator instead of me seeking other people to collaborate with. Because sometimes I think, wow, it would be so beneficial if I had support, if I had somebody I could lean on and trust, to put in the same amount of effort, to show up in the projects I want to create. And she was like, well, let's put your business vortex in that position, because there was some energy of that broken cross in the business vortex, which was kind of inhibiting my success and really flourishing there. So we worked on that. So I'm going to see how that unfolds. So I did a lot of internal work and a reflection, that self-image. And I believe that's because we were in Temperance Week. Still working with Sagittarius, that is my personality, right? Because that's my sun. So looking at the self-image and tweaking some of those outdated things. It was a really deep session. It was incredible. And I'm excited to see how that work really unfolds and shifts my experience. So, you know, going inside every day and asking, what are the alchemy items for the day? And making a list and making sure they're completed. And that involves having a target that's measurable. So it might be money, it might be something in the external world that we can measure. And going into the future, into a paradigm where that already exists, it's already true. And then kind of doing some time travel and going back and asking, what are the action steps that got me there? And specifically, what are the action steps I need to do today? So, and then that kind of creates the path, which is interesting because, as you recall, as you may recall from working with the Temperance card, the hand or the foot on the land and one in the sea represents inner and outer world, right? Working together in the actualization process. And then interesting also that the sun appears where the crown should be here. And I worked on, and this is my sun sign. This represents my sun sign. See how the crown, there's a crown where the sun should be. That's meant to look like a crown. And then the symbol of the sun is where the crown should be on Michael, Archangel Michael's crown. I'm just trying to see if there's any other symbolism here. And, you know, the triangle in the square represents spirit in matter. So again, external, working with, you know, the material world, working with your spiritual self and not separating, working together in collaboration, which I got clearer on this week, particularly with that session. So yeah, I was telling Shelly when we had session yesterday that I felt like this illness, it was the worst I've ever experienced. It was, and I do believe it served a purpose. I felt like I was springing back, right? I was like becoming less and less capable of doing anything until springing back until eventually I spring forward. And that's sometimes what setbacks can do, right? It's preparing you. How can it be an answer to the prayer or part of the manifestation process? So that was my week with Temperance. What was your week like? I'd love to know. Comment below or send me a message. And let's look at the Devil card. First, let's look at the history of the Devil card. This is going to be an interesting week. Bit of a long history here. So the Devil card is in the first card in the last act. So this is the last act. If you recall, when we first started this journey, we talked about the major arcana, right? The trump cards, before we get to the minor arcana, are separated into 3 acts of 7 cards each. The Fool doesn't count, right? The Fool is the only card with the Roman or with the Arabic numeral 0. Everyone else has a Roman numeral. And we're working through different acts. So we just finished, Temperance card was the last card, the final card in the second act. So we're entering the third act now. That's exciting. So this is the act ruled by the soul of reason, and therefore we may be surprised to find this embodiment of chaos and illogic introducing this act. Right, since it's the act of reason, we might be confused that this is the beginning of reason. The final card in this section is what Plato would call the one, the good, and the beautiful. The devil is the exact opposite. He is the selfish, the bad, and the ugly. The woman on the final trump may also represent prudence, wisdom, or reason, and the devil is imprudent, unwise, and unreasonable. He is what must be cleansed and purified to reach our goal. So interesting that I had that healing session yesterday as we began to introduce the devil. These interact, they overlap. It's not about, this is a solid temperance week and that's all I'm experiencing, right? They lead into one another. The devil does not appear in any of the early hand-painted decks, but he is included in the oldest woodcut decks and all of the printed decks thereafter. The devil in the tarot is the horned demon, who is the Christian personification of evil and who is common in medieval and Renaissance art. In contrast to the virtues, he is associated with the 7 vices. As the embodiment of disorder, he is composed of an illogical combination of details. In the earliest decks, he appears human, but has horns on his head and the feet of a bird. At times, he has a hairy body, bat wings, and a face where his genitals should be. His weapon of choice is a 3-pronged pitchfork. In the Tarot of Marseille, the devil has male genitals but female breasts, the wings of a bat, the taloned feet of a bird of prey, and the antlers of a stag. His weapon is a torch, a symbol of unbridled passion. He is standing on a pedestal. On each side, an antlered minion is chained by the neck to the pedestal. In most editions of the Marseille Tarot, one of the minions appears to be female and the other male. In scenes depicting the vices in Renaissance art, we sometimes find devils making prisoners of men and women, and the image of bound captives is common in the scenes of hell. The choice of 2 captives that we find in the Marseille deck, however, seems to suggest a deeper symbolic theme. The female minion may be thought of as a sensual figure, representing the first act and the soul of appetite, and the male minion is a harder, more threatening figure, representing the second act and the soul of will. From the perspective of the soul of reason, both lower aspects of the soul can now be seen to be in the control of the irrational. The last act ended with the virtue Temperance, triumphant, but now she is trumped by the devil. The fact that the devil appears now shows that we are approaching our goal. The devil is the guardian of higher realm. In the hero's quest, there is always a definitive final challenge before the goal can be reached. When Christ went into the desert to find his calling, the devil came to tempt him. In the stories of saints, there are similar scenes with the devil acting as the final challenge. Buddha as well had to confront Mara, the Buddhist devil, before he could reach enlightenment. It is easy to lose hope at this impasse on the mystic journey. It is often called the dark night of the soul. The famous German Renaissance artist Albrecht Dürer, 1471 through 1528, who is celebrated for his woodcuts and engravings as well as his paintings, created an engraving on this same theme entitled Night, Death, and Devil. Dürer was an avid proponent of the use of symbolism in art, and every detail in his work was intended to convey a poetic message through symbolic interpretation. Night, Death, and Devil is an image of chivalry and the heroic quest that parallels this section of the Tarot story. The knight on his horse and with his determined stance fills the center of the picture. A skull representing death lies on a stump in front of him, and Death himself, a corpse on a pale horse, the horse's head and front legs can be seen on the left of the picture in front of the knight's horse, confronts him with an hourglass, a symbol of time and mortality. The knight looks straight ahead, ignoring the warning. A dog runs alongside. As we mentioned in the discussion of the lovers, the dog represents faithfulness and duty. And this is certainly why Dürer has included the dog as the knight's companion. In the Dürer engraving, the dog links the hero in the picture with Hercules. Like Hercules, the knight has chosen the difficult path and follows his duty. He is the embodiment of fortitude and strength. There is one other small creature at the knight's feet, however, a salamander. In medieval bestiaries, the salamander was said to live in fire and to be able to extinguish it with his breath. In alchemy, the salamander is a symbol of fire, but in Christian art, because of his cooling breath, he is a symbol of faith, triumphing over the passions. Here, the salamander of faith is departing to the rear. The devil, with a goat's head and a single horn, seems to have noticed this clue and is approaching from the rear. The knight is headed for the dark night of the soul. We can see that in creating this allegory, Dürer made use of characters and other symbols that relate to ones we have found in tarot decks. The knight is a hero like the charioteer. The dog suggests the virtue strength, and death and the devil are clearly represented in the tarot. Dürer does not give us a clue about the outcome of the knight's struggle, but the next trump indicates that in the tarot, the hero will prevail. And here's a picture of Dürer's engraving, Knight, Death, and Devil, printed in 1513. So all that imagery, right? And then the next trump that indicates in the tarot that the hero will prevail is the Tower card. So that will be the next trump in the third act. And so let's get into this, the Waite-Smith symbolism of the Devil card, because that was the history. This card is connected to Capricorn, the goat. And this goat-headed image borrows from both Levi's Baphomet and the traditional Marseille card. Waite says that there is a sign of Mercury at the pit of the stomach, but it is not there. It seems that he wanted it to be more like Levi's drawing of Baphomet, the sabbatic goat, which has Mercury's staff, the caduceus, rising from his groin. Perhaps Smith left it out because they were using the Golden Dawn's correspondence with Capricorn for this card and not Levi's correspondence with Mercury. The devil has bat wings, bird's feet, and brandishes a torch, as in the Marseille card. The inverted pentagram between the horns, suggesting the shape of the horned head, is borrowed from another of Levi's drawings. The devil makes a perverted sign of benediction to mock the Hierophant. Star Trek fans will recognize it as the Vulcan sign of greeting. He is perched precariously on a narrow pillar to which a man and woman are chained. The man and the woman are Adam and Eve from the Lover's card, but their angel of love and light has become a fallen angel of selfishness and darkness. Here, their nudity represents unbridled passion instead of innocence, and as further evidence that they are ruled by their animal nature, the couple has grown tails and horns. Their tails are tied to the symbolism of their respective trees in Eden. The woman's tail bears fruit like the tree of knowledge, and the man's tail bears a flame like the tree of life. This is Adam and Eve in their fallen condition, chained to what is base. This card represents imprisonment, addiction, selfishness, and generally the bad and the ugly. So that's ushering in the divination, right? So part of the divination of this card, if this card appears in a spread, it might represent imprisonment, addiction, selfishness, and generally the bad and the ugly. Some other things that might represent. We already talked about some of these. Capricorn, the zodiac sign of Capricorn. Stuck and bound energy, dark energy, shadow of the Lover's card, sexual energy, chained to each other or bound to a situation, toxic and codependent or even sexual connection, temptation, addiction, sexual obsession, ego, materialism, rage, anger, lust, obsession in relationship, ravage, violence, force, vehemence, extraordinary efforts, fatality, that which is predestined, but not for this reason evil. And then Alice B. Grist's intuitive meaning, the devil is the addiction you suffer under, the fear you labor beneath. All that keeps you meek and small can be attributed to this horned beast. He is not an evil entity keeping you in chains. He is you. He is the cold shutters that you answer with bad habits. The devil is chock full of fear for many tarot users, and yes, he isn't the nicest card to pull, but he only reflects those aspects of ourselves we push down and deny, yet those aspects are never gone long. They raise up and enamor us to unhealthy ways of being. They bind us to fear. They create jails of self that can seem impossible to overcome. Not a human amongst us is free from the strong influence of the devil. He is that moment of doubt, that internal worry, that regret, that hand reaching for a cigarette, and that voice calling up to cancel. His harm is only as real as you allow it to be. For whilst he lurks in your soul, he is not an embodied entity. He is not a spook that resides somewhere around your spine. He is simply you, disturbed, drained, and dirty. Really fucking dirty. The devil card represents being seduced by the material world. So that was Alice's meaning. And then further meaning, the devil card represents being seduced by the material world and physical pleasures. Also living in fear, domination, and bondage. Being caged by an overabundance of luxury. Discretion should be used in personal and business matters, maybe a meaning. This card shows up. Temptation, unhealthy relationships, enslavement, materialism, bondage, fear, feeling trapped. The devil card, this is from Biddy Tarot, the devil card represents your shadow or darker side and the negative forces that constrain you and hold you back from being the best version of yourself. You may be at the effect of negative habits, dependencies, behaviors, thought patterns, relationships, and addictions. You have found yourself trapped between the short-term pleasure you receive and the longer-term pain you experience. Just as the Lover's card speaks to duality and choice, so too does the devil. However, with the devil, you are choosing the path of instant gratification, even if it is at the expense of your long-term well-being. In effect, you have sold your soul to the devil. It often appears when you have been tricked into thinking you have no control over your shadow self or these negative forces. This is an opportunity to become fully aware in order to take appropriate action to free yourself. So that's the divination of the devil card. It looks like we'll be breaking some habits this week, right? That are detrimental. And perhaps some of the other stuff that came up, we'll be looking at that. And, fear can come up with the devil card, but just know that these are archetypes contained within you. Right? I was worried about the death card because that's a very scary thing to grapple with. The devil card brings up some worry for me too, particularly because I just had some psychic attack. But I never really feel disempowered by that because I know that it's an opportunity for me to strengthen my aura, and it wouldn't be resonating if I didn't contain it as well. So in that sense, I've gone through a lot of situations that brought up a lot of fear for me where I felt like someone else was more powerful than me. And so I've grappled with a lot of that fear and feel much more empowered. So we'll see what comes up this week as far as, I can't say that I'm fearless, but certain things I realize are more real than others now. So let's use the power of sound to integrate those experiences and on a deeper level that we had with Temperance to really deepen our understanding there, integrate that and usher in synchronicities with the Devil card so that we can really fully learn and grasp the meaning there. You might want to close your eyes. Bringing in experiences and opportunities, perhaps with the zodiac sign of Capricorn, deepening our awareness of things that are maybe giving us pleasures in the short term, but we're feeling addicted or attached, and it's creating negative consequences in the long term. So we might be looking at that. We might be asked to look at that. And all the other things that came up. We might be looking at relationships that we feel bound to and changing up that agreement. Okay, so let's play the singing bowl. Go ahead and close your eyes, integrating the lessons and experiences from Temperance, calling in synchronicities and experiences with the Devil card. Beautiful. Slowly coming back to the room in your own time. So interested to see what comes up for the Devil week. And it's always a surprise to me. Things that I expect to happen never do. It's very interesting. So we'll see what comes up for us. Thank you for liking the video and subscribing, so I know you're following along and I'm on the right track here. Let me know about your experiences in the comments. Share this video with anyone you think would like to take this journey as well. Again, everything that I used in this video will be in my Amazon store. That's linked in the description of this video. And I will also be reading at a tarot event, a tarot expo in Burbank, California. I'll also include that information in the description of this video. Hope to see you there if you're in the Burbank area, March 21st and 22nd. I think that's about it. Thanks for subscribing, liking the video. Thanks for energy exchange donations. If you want a personal session, that information is in the description as well. Wishing you a week full of awareness and breaking these habits with the Devil card. I'll see you in the next video. Bye, Empath.